It is the 6th day of October 2021. I'm Dana Durnford, the nuclear proctologist.org. And you can call in 709-589-4406. Hope everybody's doing good. Except for the nuclear industry, of course. I hope you've got cancers and all kinds of issues. You're nothing but scumbags. Speaking of scumbags, the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientist, 75 years and counting. What happened 75 years ago? Oh yeah, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Hiroshima and Nagasaki. They were created the very next day, the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, by scientists from the Manhattan Project itself. So they wrote this article, 3 people, how to reduce the risk of a catastrophic spent nuclear fuel fire near the Persian Gulf. We raised an alarm at the possibilities of a severe nuclear accident in the Gulf driven by a fire in one of the spent fuel pools. A fire in a pool? How does that work? And as we explained in detail in our recent paper, in Science and Global Security. Science and Global Security. Global security. The local and possible global economic implications of such an accident are huge. Since the Fukushima Daiichi more than a decade ago, a near miss catastrophe of a fire at the Unit 4 spent fuel pool. Let's not be Pacific or anything. The near miss fire, catastrophe of a fire at the Reactor 4, which is that one over there. So she's saying, and the other people are saying, that that didn't happen, that it looks like this here. Now, this is the world media. It's not just these 4 people. But the world media is claiming that that building over there doesn't look like that. No, they're claiming it looks like the building to the right.
Where I'm standing is on top of what used to be reactor building number 4. The whole of this building was blown apart by a huge explosion.
We are here inside Reactor 4 at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant that was severely crippled during the earthquake and tsunami of 2011.
Of the decommissioning work taking place here in Reactor 4.
At the end of our tour, we were checked for radiation exposure. In 4 hours, I received the equivalent of less than a chest x-ray.
1,500 highly radioactive fuel rods inside this pool. They've got to move them outside of this reactor.
Now, it's actually assemblies, not rods. So they're not on the top of that building because there is no top to the building. The reactor cores, these were the biggest in the world, by the way, have 800 assemblies. Each assembly takes 100 fuel rods. The fuel rods are 12 feet long and 18 pounds each. Which means that each of the reactor cores has approximately 700 short tons. 700 times 2,000 pounds a ton. And so the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists is saying that that didn't happen. Look. That it doesn't look like that, it looks like this. The Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists. Published content about a free access website and an academic journal. And it was founded by a former Manhattan scientist. Immediately following the atomic bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And they have 14 Nobel laureates. This prize, the Nobel Prize, is 5 separate prizes, according to Sir Alfred Nobel's will of 1895, are awarded to those who during the preceding year have conferred to the greatest benefits of humankind. The greatest benefits. What we've noticed was all these genuinely noble attributes being distributed worldwide were created in good faith. And then they were taken over by the goblins and the scumbag industry. The Bulletin of Atomic Scientists seeks to educate citizens, policymakers, and scientists. Exactly what I actually do, but not journalists, because there is no such thing anymore. By providing non-technical, I provide the technical, and the scientifically sound, policy relevant information about nuclear weapons. Climate change is a new addition, by the way, folks, and climate change is caused by radioactive fallout and global security issues, which was not what, this is all new since the goblins have taken over. Now, like a hockey team, you have 5 people, and then you have the goalies. So 5 people have to fail or make a mistake before the puck gets to the goalie, and if the goalie makes a mistake, then the puck goes in the net, right? But hockey's just a game. This is life and death. They have 27 members on their teams. 27 of them. To make sure people like Tara don't get to tell lies. Or do they have 27 people to make sure people like me are never on their side? That my story will never get told because it's the truth. Why are all of these people evil? What's the point in this? Why did they get a job to be evil? And when you look at all of them, they all have this one thing in common, this incredible smirk on their face. They don't have something that's approachable. Neither one of them, either one of them looks at you the way they got their picture taken, and you're walking towards them, you're not going to approach them. They're unapproachable. It's not a smile. It's they're not able to smile. They don't know what an actual smile is. The Bulletin of Atomic Scientists equips the public, policymakers, and scientists with information needed to reduce... Why do they so arrogant that they're going to educate the scientists instead of the scientists educating them, I wonder? This is a model of the radioactive fallout from the Unit 4 spent fuel pool covering the northern hemisphere, exterminating all life. She says, and her 2 conspirators, since the Fukushima Daiichi disaster more than a decade ago in a near-miss catastrophe of a fire at the Unit 4 spent fuel pool. This is what it looked like immediately after the detonations. The truck is there to trick you. Now, the pools need water constantly, but as you can see, there is no pool. You're looking into the building. In fact, they tore the building down to almost to the ground level, and the building to your left is how high the building reactor 4 to the right should be. At the top of it, the very top of it, are the spent fuel pools. So obviously they're not... there's 2 of them because you have no repository anywhere in the world, let alone Japan. One of those pools is supposed to be what they call a dry pool, getting ready to transfer it into cast after maybe a decade of being in the pool, boiling off water. There's all the fuel in these pools are, by the way, still splitting the atoms. There's no containment. This is vented into your community. And this is why most nuclear reactors, when you look them up, are surrounded by farms. They're built in farmland on purpose so they can also poison you. These people are your secret society. They're a death cult. They hate you and your children and all the species on this planet. They have incredible contempt for you and all the species on the planet, and a contempt for truth and facts. And we can prove that because you won't see my narrative show up on their site. They're not going to say, you know, Tara, you're fired, get off our site. Dana Durnford actually come out and expose you. That'll never happen, see? Do you think the building over there is 190 feet high, perfect, beautiful reactor like this? Because that's the official picture. And that's the official picture. Radiation is streaming into the atmosphere after the number 4 pool boiled dry. But wait a second. The Bulletin of Atomic Scientists says that it didn't happen, Dana. They say that that never happened. Russia today talks about how big the reactors at Fukushima are. This was just a couple of days after the first detonation.
The fact that the reactor in Japan is 100 times more powerful than the one in Chernobyl.
It's 100 times more powerful than the one in Chernobyl. But if you look up the official narrative, they'll say that Chernobyl is the world's most biggest nuclear accident. So we got a poll up today for everybody. Let's bring that up. I hope everybody's... So each reactor core has 700 tons. So 4 reactors is 2,800 tons. Each pool would be stuffed with decades of reactor cores. Probably 2,800 tons in each building, plus each reactor core is another 700 tons. Say 3,000 tons per building. Well, that's 12,000 tons of the 4 reactors. There's actually 4 reactors that went down. It lost all of the pools. And generally, reactors are never completely empty, by the way. When they're doing service, they're transferring 1/3 of it. So, first off, these are homeless and destitute. We know that because they got them in paper suits. Second off, this is lethal doses. This is why they're trying to trick you that it's like that. And you see people in paper suits with no damage to the suits, no tears, no dirt on the suits, and they're always, somebody's got their hand up like they're pointing. And they use this as homeless and the destitute and the victims of society. I forgot to bring up the poll, did I? So the poll is, should nuclear students be required to work on the Fukushima nuclear meltdown? Somebody said nuclear students shouldn't go to the meltdown. Why would they do that? We got an overwhelming majority, 94%, saying yes, the homeless and destitute and victims of society should get a day off and let nuclear students take over for a day. Is that a stupid idea? I think everybody at the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, every one of them should spend at least one day at Medusa. You know Medusa, number 3 and number 4. They're Medusa. You walk up to them, you die. It's horrifying that we can't find a single media on the planet today, or last year or the year before, willing to tell you the truth. So does the stump behind those people, which is that piece of wreckage left there, is supposed to be 190 foot high. Try wrapping your mind around the story. That piece over there is supposed to be 190 feet high. And so they use cranes. Look, you see how they don't touch each other. They don't physically touch each other because it's just a stub of cement left. There's no building or reactor core or something like that there. They put the cover over with cranes, by the way. This is what it looked like when they were doing it. And you can see there's just this stub left. They put panels on it. But when you get a rare shot like this, you can see there's nothing left to the building. And they put panels on it. Then they came out and pretended it looked like that. And the atomic scientists, oh, they're getting the fuel out of reactor 4 fuel pool. Let's hope it don't have an issue. Even Arnie Gunnarsson, who made the assemblies for the racks, exactly like the ones at Fukushima, thinks it looks like that over there, that it doesn't look like this. That doesn't terrify you? That everybody's willing to lie?
Now, the division I ran built nuclear fuel racks for boiling water reactors exactly like Fukushima. And
Unit 4 has always been my biggest concern. If you watched our website, on the very first week of the accident, I was saying that if Unit 4 were to catch fire, you'd have to evacuate Tokyo.
Well, I don't know, Arnie. It looks like it caught fire to me. Well, I'm not from the big shot Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, so my words don't mean nothing, I suppose. Let's listen to Arnie say that little tiny piece again. I put his video up there where the fuel pools actually are.
the division I ran built nuclear fuel racks for boiling water reactors exactly like Fukushima.
Now, how many people think Arnie's lying? In fact, if he built the assemblies, when he looks at it, he knows reactor 3 is gone. And when you look at reactor 4, you don't have to be from the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists to know reactor 4 is gone. David Suzuki said, now this is why they're faking it. He said, I've seen a paper which says bye-bye Japan and evacuate North America's west coast if the Unit 4 goes after a quake and the rods are exposed. But the whole thing was they were already gone. Let's listen to him say it himself.
3 out of the 4 plants were destroyed in the earthquake and in the tsunami. The 4th one has been so badly damaged that the fear is if there's another earthquake of a 7 or above, that building will go, and then all hell breaks loose. I have seen a paper which says that if, in fact, the 4th plant goes under an earthquake and those rods are exposed, it's bye-bye Japan, and everybody on the west coast of North America should evacuate. Now, if that isn't terrifying, I don't know what. Fukushima is the most terrifying situation I can imagine.
And where are you supposed to evacuate to from the west coast of North America? Evacuate to Japan? Evacuate to where? The whole continent was buried in radioactive fallout. Here's another model. I apologize, I'll get back to that in a second. So, yeah, you're supposed to evacuate the coastline of North America, but you're also supposed to evacuate the coastline of the northern, or the all of North America. The Pacific and the Atlantic Ocean, the Indian Oceans, all of Europe. This model, by the way, goes up until 12th of May. That model is only based on venting. It's not based on the actual nuclear meltdowns. So they got this job. All of these people at the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists got the job so they can trick you and murder all the species and all the women and the kids on the planet. Hoax. Irresponsible rumors claim Fukushima spent fuel pool exploded. This is November the 7th, 2013. Media, Associated Press, showing the media allegedly taking a tour taking a tour of this building here. They're allegedly at the top of, there's a visible piece here we can't see, only journalists can see. 100 goes up 100 feet where that pool would be. And so they took the picture. There's 4 sides of reactor 4 before they tore it apart. Here you see physics.org faking the fuel pool. You got physics.org. You got CNN faking it. You got RT faking it. Of course, the World Nuclear News is going to fake it. It doesn't look like that because there is no building. So once again, this is the strangest picture you're ever going to see. That's the stub left of reactor 4. People in paper suits with never no dirt on any of their suits. Not only that, the minute you touch anything, you're going to tear that suit. They're actually paper. They said they had 7,000 paper suits a day, and they would incinerate the suits after the workers. Of course, what the hell is 7,000 workers going to do at a nuclear meltdown? Are you going to send them all to homeless? There is not 7,000 people there. Is another big part of the lie. Where are they going to be coming from? Surely they're not coming from a nuclear meltdown. Do you get what's going on here? Again, you see this picture. That's supposed to be 190 feet high. But you can see behind his head how low the damage is. Again, I don't understand why they got these pictures or who was getting their picture taken, but it ain't Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, it ain't academics, it ain't journalists, or it ain't nuclear TEPCO or anybody else. TEPCO doesn't go there. This is just the homeless and the destitute. So again, you see the building doesn't physically touch each other. There is no building, it's just a stub. This is what they done, how they built this stub. They put panels with cranes, not workers like they were showing you, not people in paper suits, but with cranes. They put them, and then it magically looks like this 190 feet up in the air. In reality, this is what it actually looked like. But it's worse than that. Once you zoom in on it, and we found this one picture in a story from a Japanese newspaper, and I snatched a picture. It was very, very high quality. I was able to zoom in and extract unbelievable pictures. You can no longer take a picture from that site. It's a major Japanese site. You can no longer now download a picture from that site. When you zoomed in on back of reactor 4, this is what you're seeing. It's supposed to be like this on the inside, but it looks like that on the outside. So they made it beautiful on the inside. And it's completely... Now that debris obviously is lethal doses. Otherwise, why didn't they clean it up, right? Since the Fukushima Daiichi disaster more than a decade ago, near missed catastrophe of a fire at the spent fuel pool. Does anybody outside of the atomic scientists think that the creature to the right is at the fuel pool of the building to your left?
We are here inside Reactor 4 at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant that was severely crippled during the earthquake and tsunami of 2011, leading to the country's worst nuclear disaster.
Yeah, isn't that something? Explosion at Unit 1, 3, and 4 may have caused the inventory, the nuclear fuel rods, to be lost from the spent fuel pools, which would have had several decades, because you don't have a repository anywhere on site, have several decades of reactor cores stuffed into them. Probably around 2,800 tons per building is gone. But this is true for Reactor 2 also. Reactor 2 burned continuously for almost a week. Obviously, the reactor core went China syndrome, and the fuel pool burnt off. Some of it went China syndrome at 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures. So there is no reactor 4. That's what's left of it. And that's molten cores also spread around that. A lot of it just burnt off. But reactor 3, that was like a firecracker where there's only a stub left. Does that look 190 feet to anybody besides the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists? And so what they done was, they done the same thing as at reactor 4, they done to reactor 3, where they built the structure off-site, brought it in with cranes, and laid it into place. They put a foundation around the building, then they laid this creature right here on top of it to give you the illusions. And this is what the illusion looks like on the inside. You can't get up there and you can't get inside. It's nuclear meltdown, for goodness sakes. It'll be like you can't get in there for tens of thousands of years. It takes around 60 to 100 years to decommission a nuclear power plant. But officially, they say they're going to do it in about 40 years. Multiple nuclear meltdowns. The industry is a lunatic. Only lunatics are allowed to work there for some reason. Here's reactor 3. They put the framing here to hold sheet metal up against the side of it, so you don't see into it. But you can see into it there. And you don't need to see into it because you just need to see that picture to appreciate that it's no longer a 190-foot building, is it? So they've done it both with reactor 4 and reactor 3. And the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists sang the song, oh, they're getting the fuel out of the fuel pool. Fukushima reactor site was engulfed by steam. This was the China syndrome. Something like steam. Well, it's not steam. It's 4.7 sieverts per hour vapors coming out of the ground, which was 20% more than June. But it's worse than that. There were 6 places. It's an actual video of the emissions. This is lethal doses. Now, this is 40 times normal speed. But the reactor core went down, and in 6 places, the Earth is split. It went down and hit the water table at 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures, 700 tons of reactor core. The water, of course, expands 1,200 foot per liter. That split the Earth, the detonation. In 6 places, the steam coming out of the ground is lethal doses. By the way, the Geiger counters, these are stationary Geiger counters. The Geiger counters are maxed out at 10 sieverts per hour. It's a lethal dose anywhere on the site. If it's ever stopped, the whole site's now incredible lethal dose. Because 10 sieverts an hour that's how the deception. When that anywhere in that steam is 10 sieverts an hour, it's millions of sieverts. You can't get within football fields of the plumes that are constantly coming out of it for extended periods, by the way. Right? 20% more than June. It never stopped coming out for several years. There was nobody on the site. And they talk about ceasing, but there's 1,000 types of fission products you got to worry about. How to reduce the risk of a catastrophic spent nuclear fuel fire near the Persian Gulf? Well, South Korea done a study. For 24 million people would need to be evacuated from Japan and China. Not just that local area, but also from Japan, South Korea, Japan, and China. Now, in Japan, they had what they call a common spent fuel pool, which under normal conditions had 6,375 assemblies. Each assembly is 1,800 pounds. It's 100 fuel rods that are 12 feet long and 18 pounds each. But that's not normal conditions. We don't have a repository anywhere on the planet, which is still almost 10 million pounds. But the pools are stuffed because they don't have a repository. This year, in January, they released 736 pictures. Now, I've done presentations on every one of these pictures, and they took my videos down and my site. Last month, with 24,000 subscribers, 24,200 subscribers for the last 4 years. Never went up, never went down. It was 24,200 subscribers for last 4 years. And then I was out on a research expedition doing species counts 450 kilometers away from base, in the woods, in the middle of nowhere, and they took down my site while I was about to post videos from ground zero. And so this is the common spent fuel pool. This is pictures that were released this year, 726. Every one of them are redacted or blotted out. Why is the common spent fuel pool blotted out? Because that was lost also. And so was reactor 6. And to give you context, at the top of the pictures, you're seeing containers from transport trucks piled up. It gives you an idea how big this common spent fuel pool behind reactor 4 that don't exist. Why is it blocked out? Why is it redacted? Why is it pixelated? How come the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists doesn't ask or answer any of these questions that I showed you tonight? And what's scary about the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists is you got, instead of 5 people on the hockey team, you have 27 people to guarantee the truth is never told. That's their job, is to guarantee you never read what I showed you on their site. Their job is to murder you and your friends and your families and your loved ones and the 8 million species on our planet. That's their job. That's their mission. That's evil. That's the definition of a death cult and a secret society. But it's definitely the definition also of evil, yes? They're going to be lucky I don't do the entire next week dedicated to the Bulletin of the Unconcerned Scientist. Mary Dickson. The bill may be the last chance to help the Utah downwinders. We've covered this recently quite a few times. We're covering it again. Many people suffering from diseases. There's 1,800 illnesses and diseases and autoimmune deficiencies and injuries that you get from radiation. It's not just cancer, which is what they got you to believe, and if you're not familiar with this topic. Remember, each of the reactors at Japan, just the reactor core, not counting the fuel pools, but just the reactor cores, each of them are 700 short tons. Bipartisan agreement is hard to come by these days, but bills introduced in the Senate and the House can make a huge difference for those of us who are survivors of the nuclear testing, survivors of radioactive fallout, have suffered deadly health effects. There's heart problems, liver problems, lung, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline. There's Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, diabetes, and Down syndrome. There's schizophrenia. Your immune system is compromised, so now you're more susceptible to pathogens and viruses. When the radiation gets in your body attacks it relentlessly for the rest of your life with white blood cells. There's an instant effect, and you're going to feel it because the white blood cells are permanent, attacking the radiation to build a tumor around it, and at the same time, that displaces your red blood cells that are carrying oxygen and nutrition throughout your body. Why is it? So right away you have a cause and effect. Now you got no energy, you're lethargic, and your immune system's compromised. You're more susceptible to stuff that would normally be harmless and innocuous and benign, like the coronavirus, which is the cover-up from the fallout from Japan. Because Japan has to have an effect, right? You can't have massive plumes covering the northern hemisphere without some effects to the human population And this is what I do. I count the insect species because they're at the bottom of the food chain. I work my way up the food chain. So in order to cover the effects from the radioactive fallout, they invented coronavirus. They're going for broke. And the Union of Unconcerned Scientists is happy to help them perpetrate these crimes against our beautiful planet. Without congressional action, RECA will expire unless... sorry, let me go back. Senators have championed downwind communities, and everybody's a downwinder from these events. And nuclear testing survivors would extend and expand the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act, which provides compensation to people who are likely to develop cancers and other diseases due to exposure to radioactive fallout from testing or uranium mining on top of that. And without congressional action, I'm going to turn the volume down on that. Without congressional action, RECA will expire in less than a year, even though people are getting sick. Suffering health complications and cancers are returning, and they are saddled with untenable, huge, massive medical expenditures to their income. With bipartisan support in the House and Senate, legislation would extend the time frame for compensation by 19 years. So, but it covers all downwinders in all of Utah, in all of Arizona. Everybody is a victim. In all of Nevada, in all of New Mexico, in all of Idaho, in all of Montana, in all of Colorado, all of Guam. And that's how radiation fallout works. It doesn't just hit a few people in one community. It covers the continents and wipes out all the species. This is what makes the Bulletin of Unconcerned Scientists so insidious, so cowardly, such human trash, traitors. Sedition is what they're doing to your country. It's actually a crime to do it. It's not propaganda, it's sedition. They're disarming the population from a lethal threat that is in their environment. They're saying, no, you got nothing to worry about. We'll let you know when you got something that you should worry about. We'll be the arbiters. And they're the murderers. That's what they do for a living. They're professional genocide machines. They're professional misery machines. Without congressional action, the RECA will expire in less than a year. And they need... So everybody in Utah, Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico, Idaho, Montana, Colorado, and Guam should get $50,000 to $150,000 each as a settlement for being poisoned by the nuclear industry. Obviously, that should be extended. I think I can dig up some of these fallout maps from America from weapons testing. Who knows what Dana? Oh, here we go. Well, there's many ways you're going to get the fallout, by the way, right? Let's do this. So just this one map is, each of the lines you're looking at are at least 2 or more nuclear tests where that's the way the plume went. But that's obviously it's a lot worse than that. Horrifyingly, it's obviously a lot worse than that. The extensions and expansions would help ensure that people made sick by... Now, the nuclear testing is an actual nuclear war. The fallout is the same as a nuclear war. They knew this. They hid it. They told people they didn't have to get out of the way on top of that. And for 75 years refused to acknowledge the harmful effects. The ultimate betrayal, every facet of nuclear, no matter where you go, and every organization like the Bulletin of the Unconcerned Scientists, is clearly sending you the message that they hate us. I don't know why, but they hate us. They despise us. They are working very diligently to exterminate us and all the species on the planet. And they're perpetrating crimes against you and humanity in their pursuit. And so let's hope these people push this rule through. At least some people will have some justice. The rest of the planet will be murdered. Invisible poison entered our bodies without us even knowing it. And they went through incredible amount of work so that you couldn't know it. You have no way to know it. To many who have died, many of us who have buried and mourned the dead, it is urgent that Congress does the right thing and pass these bills so justice is served for those victims who are harmed by the insidious, hateful scum nuclear industry. And we thank Mary Dickson for doing that. Radioactive baby teeth, JFK, and kids with cancer. Kids with cancer. So if your kid got diagnosed as cancer and you don't want to give the kid chemotherapy, they'll take the kid away from you. They'll put the kid in a hospital under guard, and then they'll murder the kid with chemo. And you'll get the bill later. Nuclear shutdown news chronicles the decline and fall of the nuclear industry in the U.S. and beyond, and highlights the efforts of those who are working to bring about a nuclear-free world. That ain't never going to happen. They destroyed our world. It's permanent now for millions of years, the radiation already released. You look at Castle Bravo, just boggles the mind. Equal to 1,000 Hiroshima nuclear bombs going off. It's equivalent to 2 countries fired 500 Nagasaki or Hiroshima-sized 15-kiloton nuclear bombs at each other. Is that not a nuclear war? The fallout is the same thing. See? It's a nuclear war. It doesn't matter if it was fired in anger or not. There was no reason for America, the Soviet Union, or Russia, or India, or Pakistan to detonate as many weapons as they did. There really wasn't. It was just evilness from the nuclear industry. The nuclear industry reveled in, because they knew what the ultimate outcome would be. One particular radioactive chemical, strontium-90, received particular attention, still does today. As with other fallout, it does not exist in nature, and like its non-radioactive cousin calcium, it's not a cousin of calcium. It has the same attributes, but it's man-made, it's anthropogenic. It enters our body, it concentrates in our bones and teeth, and can emit radiation there for about 200 years. This is the strontium-90, potentially causing cancers and other dread diseases. Not only that, strontium-90 likes to go to the pelvis where it mutates the stem cells for the rest of your life. In the 1960s and 50s, consumption of milk was strongly encouraged, especially for children. And reports of strontium-90 in the milk began to appear. In 1961, after President Kennedy took office, Mothers Strike for Peace formed to promote a banning of the nuclear testing worldwide. And the movement quickly went global and then was co-opted. It was like Mother's Day was originally, because the military back in hundreds of years ago would just come into communities and conscript young adults, just jack them right from the families and take them to war, and they would never come back. And so years ago, Mother's Day was when the mothers would protest to find out what happened to their children. It was just one day a year they were allowed to go out and protest. And that got co-opted by the industry. Now it's Mother's Day where everybody has to buy a consumer item and give it to their loved ones, or they're a bad child. And that's the same thing we've seen happen with just about every foundation and every NGO on the planet has been co-opted by the industry and is now weaponized back against the entire biosphere. Around the same time, activists and scientists in various parts of the globe developed the idea of collecting babies' teeth and testing them for the presence of strontium-90. In the US, these efforts centered around St. Louis, with parents donating their kids' teeth to be tested at a Washington University. Now, 99% of the universities have been co-opted by the industry. All of the media has been co-opted by the nuclear industry. They've also captured the regulators and have key positions in the governments in increments over the last 75 years. And obviously, the Bulletin of Unconcerned Scientists is completely full of murderers, degenerates, and cowards, and a place where sedition runs rampant. Around the same time, activists and scientists in various parts of the globe developed the idea of collecting baby teeth. Done that. The results were disturbing, indicating that more fallout accumulated in the environment, the more strontium-90 showed up in children's teeth. In fact, Australia, because of Montebello and Maralinga, all the British testing down there, they actually secretively were jacking bones from children that had died. Usually like a femur bone and stuff like this. And they had 22,000 bones from dead children, all testing for the strontium-90, and showed that all the children in Australia were highly radioactive from the British. The British used to wait for the wind to blow across the United Kingdom before they set off their detonations. I'm actually going to do a video on Australia next week, because they took down all my other ones on my other site with 1,600 videos. So he says he was talking to President Kennedy. He was the science advisor. Jerome Wisner described President Kennedy's reaction as he conveyed the news to the president. As the president looked at the window of the White House on a rainy day, I told him fallout was washed out of the clouds by rain, and that it would be brought to earth by rain. And he said, and looking out the window, "You mean it's in the rain out there?" And I said, "Yes." And he looked out the window looking very sad and didn't say a word for several minutes. Soon thereafter, Kennedy got the test ban treaty agreed to by the United States, the USSR, and the UK. And on July the 8th, 1963, speech encouraging this, he told the world, "The number of children and grandchildren with cancer in their bones, with leukemia in their blood and poisons in their lungs might seem statistically small to some. This is not a natural health hazard, and it's not a statistical issue. And the loss of one human life or the malformations of even one baby who may be born long after we are all gone should be a concern to us all. Our children and grandchildren are not merely statistics towards which you can be indifferent. Indeed. Nuke plants implicated too. Nuke plants are hemorrhaging radiation. In fact, the atmospheric testing, aka secret nuclear war, changed the sex ratio of all humans on the planet. So there's more males than females. But that's true. You can't do it to all the humans, but also doing it to all the insects and all the birds and all the mammals and all the animals, yeah? You can't just do this to humans. It has to affect all the species. And this nuclear industry seems to revel in exterminating everything. They get a paycheck every Friday, and their job is to exterminate all us. Why can't they go get a real job? They got incredible educations. Why don't they go get a real job? Why do they pick a job that ultimately murders all the species and all the humans? Why so much contempt? Why do they hate us? Why do they hate the species so much? I'm confused. Starting in the 1950s, U.S. federal government, Atoms for Peace. Atoms for Peace. program encouraged heavily subsidized proliferation of commercial nuclear power plants to produce electric power for the general public. And this electricity was too cheap to meter, people were promised. Of course, it's too big to fail now. This was just the first of many such promises that proved false. Another was that the fallout released by the plants would be negligible. But as the words 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, and Fukushima entered our vocabularies, another picture entered our minds, and it looked like a mushroom cloud. It turns out that all nuclear power plants have to regularly release radioactivity into the environment, the same kind as nuclear weapons, including strontium-90. So once again, the radioactive baby teeth come back on the scene. And this was hastened in 2001 when workers in Washington, U.S. and St. Louis found a previously unknown number of untested baby teeth. It turned out to be 100,000 baby teeth was hid away so they couldn't test it. It ended up with the Radiation Public Health Project, which had already conducted studies with other baby teeth collected within 50 miles of U.S. nuclear plants that indicated disturbing levels of strontium-90 as well as abnormally high numbers of childhood cancers. Well, it's not, once again, it's not just cancers, right? In the 2008 book, Radioactive Baby Teeth, The Cancer Link, Radiation and the Public Health Project, Executive Director Joseph Magano, who we've covered quite a few times, says RPHP was the first to examine the health risks using baby tooth study, and it concentrated on childhood cancers, the disease most likely to show such a risk. The group found a statistical link between the strontium-90 teeth and cancer diagnosis in the children under 10, near 3 nuclear power plants in New Jersey and New York. But we've seen that with all nuclear plants, when you do studies around them, it shows that you've got to be looking for heart problems and liver problems and lung and respiratory, pituitary and thyroid and adrenaline, diabetes and Down syndrome. You got to look for 1,800 illnesses you'll find peaking around nuclear sites. This is a disturbing story. Again, I've seen a lot of these stories. So this young activist, known as Greta, has a following, a big following of people that she's motivated. Now, she's been hoodwinked by the industry. She's a product of propaganda. She doesn't know it, but she has got a big following, and they're scared of that following. Because if she finds out about nuclear, they're in trouble, real trouble. She finds out, for instance, 3 million children require permanent treatment because of Chernobyl, and many will die prematurely, by the Secretary General Kofi Annan in 2000 on the podium of the United Nations. She might start looking a little bit deeper. And if all those kids come to realize what's really going on, the nuclear industry is in real trouble, because they'll go to war. You don't want these kids, because they don't care about nothing. They're kids. They'll go to war. They'll torture this industry. In 2 weeks flat, this industry will be crying for mercy. Greta Thunberg did again at the Youth for Climate event in Milan last week, ahead of a meeting of global leaders to chart the course of the COP26 Climate Summit. So I'm going to explain to you what climate change actually is. It's radioactive fallout. And it's simple. This is Neptunium-239 dispersion from Fukushima Daiichi. This is data from TEPCO. So you have these invisible plumes, these invisible snowstorms covering the planet, pulsing energy at the speed of light. Do you know how much energy it takes to get something to go the speed of light? It's a lot of energy, yeah? So all the fuel pools, by the way, are hemorrhaging this stuff out of their reactors, fuel pools, all day long, 24 hours a day. There's no containment, right? There's the same models of the dispersion of plutonium-239 covering the whole planet with radiation. There's models of the xenon-133 from Fukushima covering the planet with radiation. These are invisible clouds. You can't see them or smell them or taste it or hear it or feel it or touch it or pick it up or throw rocks at it. But it's right there on my Geiger counter screaming every second, yeah? It's pulsing energy every second. It'll pulse through walls this thick and damage your DNA. You telling me that's not energy? These invisible clouds are pulsing energy. And there's more coming out all day long. There's more added to the pile from all the nuclear power plants. Not just the venting that they do regularly, because no one ever hold them accountable. Because, we're depending on the bulletin of unconcerned scientists to hold them accountable, but there's zero possibilities they're going to do it. They're actually monsters. This invisible plume is pulsing energy every second, heating up the planet, and it's being added to all day, every day. It's never going to go away. And so the nuclear industry understood this a very long time ago, and they planned it far ahead. But what happened was, they tricked everybody, and they blamed it on your tin cans, your pop bottles. So, like, cold, oil, and gas emissions don't create plumes that covers the planet and pulses energy every second. Coal, oil, and gas doesn't pulse energy every second. But radioactive does, radiation does. So all the nuclear testing was doing this. All the nuclear meltdowns they hit away were doing this. All the nuclear dumping is doing this. 440 nuclear pools on the planet doing this all day long. Hemorrhaging this stuff that pulses energy every second. So the 18-year-old has successfully converted millions of her cohorts to become single-issue activists. And Thunberg has an extraordinary opportunity to use her global platform to speed along the energy transition by going nuclear. Not metaphorically, but actually. So what they're trying to do with that media, Rob Cox, right, writing an article in the big media, trying to get Thunberg to promote nuclear. The same nuclear that's exterminating all the species on the planet. But this shows you how evil the industry actually is. And there's many media that was doing that to her and will continue to do that to her. Is try to win her over and get her to promote nuclear because she's at a vulnerable age where she doesn't understand the minutiae of the minutiae, the details of the details of radiation. Unless you come across someone like me, then she would learn extremely quick. And the nuclear industry would no longer get a free ride. And millions of kids would go to war against the nuclear industry, which is what we need to happen. And at some point that will happen with or without Thunberg and the people that support her. The world at some point is going to wake up, and now it's too late, but they still got to do something. We'll wake up and attack this nuclear industry. So then they invoked Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is a corporation known as United Nations. It's under their umbrella. They're a corporation by the nuclear industry, by the captured regulators. The United Nations is nobody's friends. They don't have sovereignty over anybody's countries or anybody's ideology or anybody's charters, like the Magna Cartas or the U.S. Constitution or the Canadian Bill of Rights. They have no influences over that whatsoever, no authority. But yet everybody right now is bending over and kissing their feet because they don't understand. This has been shoved down their throat for decades. They were created right after Hiroshima and Nagasaki, by the way. United Nations is the military-industrial complex itself. Ask South Korea. They burnt down every community in South Korea with napalm and have tortured it now for over 60 years straight. Got to have a boogeyman, even though they're the boogeyman. Look no further than the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which warned that the world's aims to limit the global warming to 1.5 degrees will fall short without embracing nuclear power. And that's an erroneous statement, by the way. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change didn't say those words. They said that was an option. But they're pro-nuclear. Who cares what they says? They're not an authority. They're part of the industrial complex itself. Climate change is caused by nuclear. This is simple. There's an invisible cloud that never goes away and pulses energy every second at the speed of light. You tell me that's not energy. You got something out there that pulses energy at the speed of light, and you're going to tell me that that's not a contributing factor? Not only that, it has the capability of everything it touches, of converting that into something that pulses energy every second. So all the leaves that fall off a tree, radioactive tree, are now pulsing energy every second. All the pollen that's coming out of the plants is radioactive and is pulsing energy every second. You tell me that that is not something that we need to worry about. Of course, that's exactly what the Bulletin of Unconcerned Scientists is doing, right? They're convincing you that nuclear is not the issue, that you are. Like the rest of them are doing to you. The science is hard to deny, as the IPP points out. Over the past half-century, nuclear has been around 75 years, they claim that nukes helped to reduce the global emission of carbon dioxide by about 74 gigatons, or the equivalent of 2 years' worth of total global energy-related emissions. This is the lie, and they're like Pinocchio. If they were Pinocchio, their nose now would be wrapped halfway around the planet. This is your number one enemy. It's called radioactive fallout. It exists forever. The more you get, the less will survive. This is not a game. This is an extinction level event. This is Japan's model. Think about all the other models. Hard case. Carbon dioxide doesn't pulse energy every second. Carbon dioxide doesn't create plumes like this. Radiation, permanent plumes. That's global warming. Well, wind and solar power capacity surge, and there's a compelling argument for a stable zero carbon alternative. Nuclear is not zero carbon, never was, never will be, never could be. And wind and solar, of course, you can store energy with compressed air storage and pumped hydro. You can do it anywhere on the planet with compressed air. You have big tunnels. It's low pressure. You're not talking about 4,000 psi. You're talking about 120 psi. It's not going to frack the earth or fracture the earth. So you big normal tunnels, and you compress air into it. When there's no wind, no sunshine, then you got that compressed air. And the compressed air is created by excess energy that you can't sell to the grid. But that's your peak energy. It's simple. You don't need to destroy the planet. You get rid of coal, oil, and gas and nuclear overnight once you get it up and running. And it's obsolete technology. What makes it sort of surprising that there seems to be no mention of nukes in the concluding recommendations from last week's youth driving ambition powwow, where Thunberg made her speech. So he's complaining because she didn't promote nuclear for the youth driving ambition. You know why she didn't promote nuclear? Because she's waking up. She's starting to understand it. So what they're trying to do is turn the people that support her against her. And Thunberg herself has been relatively mute on the question, despite hailing from Sweden, a country that derives 40% of its electricity from splitting the atom. And 2 years ago, she said she was personally opposed to nuclear power, calling it extremely dangerous, expensive, and time-consuming, which is 100% correct. It's 100% correct. But imagine if she watches 3 or 4 of my presentations. Then she's not going to be naive no more. Then there's millions of kids turning on the industry within 1 week. But she also nodded to the IPCC suggestion it could be part of the solution to climate change. She didn't nod to it. She's 18 years old. She's just rallying people to try to do something about the climate change. that nuclear could be part of the solution to climate change. She said, let's leave that debate until we start looking at the full picture. Which was a great response, because she's not aware of how this industry has exterminated most of our planet already. This is where Thunberg and the followers can help. Her followers can help by issuing a robust public recognition of the potential for next generation nuclear technology to replace the hydrocarbons that are being burned and sending profits to the contentious Ruskies and Saudi Arabia. Think about what an incredible scumbag. Think about what an incredible scumbag that Rob Cox and George Hay and Karen Kwok are. These are incredible degenerates. And many of the medias have also done the exact same thing, trying to co-opt the movement. That shouldn't be there. It's supposed to be joined onto another story that I shifted around. Japan counts the costs as Olympic hangover sets in. Japan counts the cost as Olympic hangover sets in. Oh, great and green. The 2021 Olympic Tokyo has its own new legacy that may be worse, coming on top of embarrassing cost overruns, arguments over the design of the national stadium logo, plagiarism scandal, vote bribery scandal, a $15 billion bill, which is, I think they spent $35 billion now on the Olympics so the IOC can make a bunch of money. To be paid by Tokyo taxpayers, not the IOC, and revenue loss from the inability to sell tickets due to the coronavirus, and the ex-Prime Minister of Japan degrading women. Don't forget that one. And racist and bigoted and biased and prejudiced comments that he made. Anger and resentment felt by citizens forced to stay home under a COVID state of emergency, which is the cover-up for Fukushima, as daily cases reach record highs of 6,000. Yeah, because your country's irradiated. 2012, they had 865,000 excess cancers. They have one street in Japan where 7 people dropped dead in a single year in Fukushima Prefecture. While thousands of athletes and their handlers occupied the national stadium, and IOC Chairman Thomas Bach strolled on the Ginza. A professor at Tohoku University Graduate School of Economics and Management said the Olympics are in part negativity affecting the local economy. He added that the event failed to have a positive impact on the 2011 it's a quadruple disaster, not triple, scumbags, hit prefecture Miyagi and Fukushima. It was actually 14 prefectures. It's actually 14 prefectures where no one wants to focus. It's grown right by the radiation and is shipped around the world to poison everybody. "14 prefectures, the food is banned in 55 countries until recently, and it should be banned forever, right? In addition, or Miyagi, Fukushima, but it's actually 14 prefectures. Half of Japan, the food is radioactive. And they were feeding it to the people at the Olympics, yeah? In addition, hundreds of homeless vagrants were removed from urban encampments in Tokyo to make room for the Olympic-related events, leaving them with nowhere to go, which is standard. By the way, wherever the Olympic IOC goes and sets up shop, they spend $1 billion on security equipment and that, and they leave that behind. They turn the country into a police state wherever they go. That's a fact. Look it up. 17 straight days, NHK Evening Olympic News was dedicated to Japanese athletes. And the medal winners mostly, to the exclusion of everything else. So Japan was extremely prejudiced and racist and bigoted The double standard was glaring. While Tokyo bars and restaurants were forced to close early every evening, leaving Tokyoites with nowhere to go, IOC President Thomas Bach and friends relaxed in the luxurious hotels, enjoying the finest foods and alcohol that $35 billion can buy. IOC President Thomas Bach. I got a story about him coming up. Despite Japanese people being discouraged from even domestic travel, IOC President Thomas Bach went from Tokyo to Hiroshima for an excursion that had zero to do with the games, apparently unconcerned that he and his entourage might spread the virus across Honshu. His return to Tokyo from Switzerland for the opening ceremony of the Paralympics without having to go into quarantine even drew a sharp rebuke from the government health experts. It's hard to read green, eh? Sapporo was being pushed by the IOC for the 2030 Winter Games. Why would you bring them back after they almost bankrupted your country? The 1964 Olympics were considered a roaring success, but the negative after effects of those games can still be felt in Tokyo. How much worse will the legacy of the 21 games be? Thomas Bach, with the most hateful person ever to come out of Japan, Shinzo Abe. Think about this story here. IOC chief confirms Japan's food products are safe after Fukushima nuclear disaster. Think about how evil you got to be to do something like that. Why insert himself into that position? Thomas Bach, the Olympics. You got a good picture of him. Look at that. The International Olympic Committee's President Thomas Bach intends to assure the participants of the 2020 Olympics and Paralympics that Japanese food products are safe following the nuclear crisis. Well, the country was covered in radiation. You couldn't buy food from 14 prefectures from 55 countries worldwide because it was radioactive, which means it's going to be radioactive forever. It just defies it, don't it? That he's now going to make sure, you're going to tell everybody the food is okay, don't worry about it. So he's willing to murder everybody so they can have their Olympics. But see, $35 billion is not having the Olympics. $35 billion is a lot of money. It's a lot of money. So in 2019, the study came out 14% per 100,000 children, live births for neonates and infants, need open heart surgery, or they're going to have incredible complications or might even die. So that's 14,000, 14.2% is 14,200 babies need open heart surgery out of every 100,000 across the entire country. Not just Fukushima prefecture or those 14 prefectures, but the whole country. Over budget and fraught with problems, Tokyo Game sparks calls for Olympic reform. Japan will have to spend as much as $35 billion to host the Games, smashing through the original $7.5 billion budget. They're like a nuclear reactor where they're nothing but misery for the rest of your life after having them. So a single plutonium particle on the lung can eventually cause a tumor. They got 30 million one-ton bags. It's actually 60 million now. One-ton bags picked up. And the International Atomic Energy Agency, created in 1957 by an anonymous group and started answering to United Nations 2 years later, says there's no such thing as a safe level of radiation. There is no IAEA. They're the industry. They're appointed, not elected. And that the allowable standards for radiation are based on benefits, not actual safety. In other words, they're based on natural stuff, not man-made stuff. 30 million one-ton bags. There was 150,000 sites across eastern Japan. In Tokyo, 29 million becquerels per square meter of soil. 29 million becquerels. 29 million. Hello? Hello?
Hi, is this Dana?
Who's asking?
My name is John Marshall.
Hi, John. What can I do for you?
You're on live right now.
Yeah, do you want to go live?
Sure.
Okay, here we go. We got a caller calling in. Go ahead, John.
I want to tell you, Dana, that I have been watching your videos, live streams, and I'm so moved by everything that you were speaking of, and I hate to use this word, or this term, but I have to, and that is the word fact checking. But as I grow as a 48-year-old man here who also agrees with you on, how the nuclear industry has really messed up our world.
Yeah, no doubt.
I want you to know that I appreciate you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
You very much. I rewrote my will last week, and I put you and your organization in it very strongly, and
thank you.
I want you to keep doing what you're doing, because you're doing an excellent job.
Yeah, because the visual makes sense, right, John?
Excuse me, sir?
I say that all the visuals that I bring to the show, it tells the story on its own, right? It's not hard to understand in this format, is what you're saying, right?
No, not at all. Your presentations are amazing, and I'm someone who used to work in the radio broadcasting business, but now I'm an Ottawa firefighter for 22 years, and I want you to know that I appreciate what you're doing, and so much so I would like to talk to you off air at some point to assist you, to help you both financially and because I am an excellent public relations person, and like I said, I've been an Ottawa firefighter for 22 years, full-time Ottawa firefighter. I'm not just volunteer firefighter.
No.
I volunteered for years before, but I'm a full-time Ottawa firefighter.
Yeah, thank you for your service.
I would like, no, don't thank me. Don't thank me. I thank you. I thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And I want to help you as best as I can. And I really don't know what really that is. Is it just financial assistance? Is it?
I think it's just getting.
I'm a very good PR type guy. Is there any other way that I can help you and
you know what I said.
More people into your realm.
Yeah, I used to, a couple of years ago, I used to suggest to people, rather than donate to me, take the money and get an ad in your local paper and just send people to my site. Because that starts the conversation. Is people go to the site to see all this documentation, and they start asking questions. But up to that point, they don't know what questions to ask, right? But once they go to my site, then they start understanding. Here's a lot of questions they need to ask. That's a good idea too. That's just one of the many ways that somebody can help. I used to always suggest people that they might want to do something like that also, right? And because you can do public relations, then you must know different ways. I can't keep up with everything I'm doing, but I would imagine people out there, and I know for a fact there are people out there that on their own are promoting my documentation and my site and my information, and that's why we made it this far. Okay, well, call me sometime offline. You want to talk to me also, John? It's good to hear from you. I appreciate it. The show is almost over. And so, thank you.
I understand that. I understand that, sir. And those are great comments, and I will do that. But I have a greater need to help you, so I will talk to you. Offline.
Right. Hey.
I'm sorry. I watch your show as often as I can.
Well, John, I understand the greater need. That's why I'm here every night, right? I'm just like you, man. I'm just like you, sir. I understand the need, and I've worked hard to have that narrative, because I understand there's a lot of people out there who don't know the difference, and that I can do at least that much, where I can articulate for them what the issues are, and that this is not a game and it's not going to go away, and that we need to be proactive immediately. And enough of people like you and myself and that participate, the better it is for this planet and the future generations. Okay, my friend.
Sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely. And I call you, sir, with complete respect.
Yeah, no, it's good, John. Thank you, John.
I don't want you to ever say that to me again if I call you again.
Yeah.
Don't ever call me sir. You are sir.
Well, thank you, John.
I care about the planet as much as you do.
Yep.
Well, probably not as much as you do. I'm trying.
Yeah.
And I think you're doing a wonderful job. I want to promote your organization. I want to promote you. I want to help you financially. I want to help you also PR sort of ways. And I want you to know that I appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, John.
Thank you so much, Dana.
You're welcome, my friend. Thank you for the call. God bless you, my friend. You have a good night.
God bless you.
Okay, good night, John. And I can understand where John's coming from. I do this because it's got to get done. We don't have another option, therefore we got to be the option, right? And what I do is absurd amount of work to pull off these presentations. 29 million becquerels in Tokyo. So Tokyo is supposed to be evacuated. We'll just finish up here now. Tokyo drinking water unsafe for infants. That's forever. That's not for 8 days or 36 days. That's forever. It's not just iodine. It's 1,000 fission products, as I showed you earlier. And the scary part about this is 11 becquerels a kilogram of just cesium. There's 1,000 fission products you're going to worry about. Children start to see heart problems. So when you got 29 million per square meter, and 11 of them, just a lousy 11 of them, is going to cause heart problems. This is not a game. This is an emergency. And they're selling food with minimum of 100 becquerels a kilogram of just cesium. They're not actually checking for uranium or plutonium or americium or neptunium or strontium or curium fission products, which is the biggest byproduct of the radiative fuel rod, is curium isotopes. And you need lead shielding 20 times thicker for curium isotopes than you do for plutonium isotopes. And plutonium was named after the devil because it's so lethal. And the bizarre, hateful, despicable, coward industry raised the recommendations of the World Health Organization 75 times higher to get pills for these iodine pills, which saturate your thyroid gland with natural iodines, but your thyroid gland also bioaccumulates all gamma. So like stuff like cesium is going to bioaccumulate in your thyroid, not just iodine, right? And the problem is the radioactive elements that go in your thyroid now will be mutated hormones, radioactive hormones that get distributed throughout your body and can destroy and cause grief with all kinds of other glands in your body, right? The pituitary gland, the adrenaline glands. Strontium found in 2,200 locations in Fukushima. Not surprising, it's all over Yokohama. We've done a story there a little earlier about strontium-90. Strontium in 2,200 locations. They're growing food in that prefecture and shipping it to Canada, United States, and everywhere else. It's absurd. And now they just lifted the regulations of checking it. Not that they actually were. So irreversible heart damage for children with 50 becquerels a kilogram. This is not a game, see? This is just a single application. Imagine if you're eating it all the time, which is what you're going to be doing now because nobody's allowed to have a conversation, only the perpetual lawyers. 50,000 becquerels a kilogram of radioactive cesium in the soil near Tokyo. Terrifying, the sample was taken from the side of streets where children walk every day. So then what about the 29 million becquerels per square meter in Tokyo? Is that not terrifying? Here we go. We got two more to get through. 276,000 becquerels a kilogram multiplied by 64 to get the square meters, 18 million becquerels. These are absurd numbers. All of this is absurd. You don't want to eat anything from Japan. 24,000 becquerels a kilogram of radioactive cesium in soil samples. And so top cancer doctor, nuclear radiation is the most carcinogenic thing that exists. Just a single atom. You have 14 prefectures. It's not just Fukushima, where they're growing food now and shipping it into your countries. It's not a game. This is not a game. This is life and death, and it's time the world picked a side. And if you're with the Union, the Bulletin of Unconcerned Scientists, we know what side you picked. You picked evil. So you can get a paycheck. It's heartbreaking. So let me give a shout out to everybody. Shout out to John who called in there earlier. Thank you, John. Conrad, let's do the poll. We got 29 votes. I'll close the poll here now. We got 29 votes. And we actually got 10% of people voted that nuclear students shouldn't be required to work at the Fukushima nuclear meltdowns. So why would you not want nuclear students at a nuclear meltdown? Just the homeless and the destitute and the victims of society. You don't want to come up with solutions. You just want to sacrifice the victims of society. And we got 29 votes up. So super slow night. We got 26 people on my show. We'll end the poll right here. We got 26 people on the show. I got 417 subscribers in the last month or so because they took down my other site. So these are all fresh subscribers, all new subscribers. I can only get less than 1% of them here. What a hateful industry. What a disgusting industry, yeah? Tim Norris. Hi, Tim. Tim, it's 700 tons per reactor. Not the buildings, but just the reactors. These were the biggest in the world. So 4 reactors, unit 1, 2, 3, and 4 is 2,800 tons. That is caught fire and blew up and caught fire. The fuel pools had decades of those reactor cores at 700 tons each stored in them. We're talking about at least 12,000 tons in each for the 4 buildings, and the common spent fuel pool had 10 million pounds normally, but it was stuffed because they don't have a repository. Good night, Conrad and Andrew B, which is CFINSTR. Thank you, Andrew. Colette, hi Colette. Hugs for Colette. Thank you, honey. Only served one king, and hugs for you, Ella. Hugs for you, Truth Seeker. Everybody gets hugs tonight. In a hugging kind of way. I celebrated my birthday yesterday, and it was tough not to do a show last night. That was so tough. HTMISAM or LSAM. I'll just call him Sam. James Olhan. Hi, James. Good night, everybody. Ketcha. Thinker. Did I miss anybody? I'm scrolling down through the comments quickly. Johnson. Thank you. James Lucid. Hi, James. Angelica. Boston. Good night, everybody. Shane Clark. There we go. We made it through, everybody. See, I never know what to put in the title, right? Excuse me, I had a choky nut voice again tonight. Because all of these shows are jam-packed full of documentation and information. All of them. I just put up episode 1, episode 2, episode 3, but how do you bring people in when you're censored as heavily as I am, right? Because I'm censored incredibly heavily. Yeah, okay, well, that's it for tonight. It's been a hell of a long day for me. Good night, everybody. God bless everybody. Have a great day tomorrow. We'll see everybody for tomorrow night's show. Might be a show of die-offs, marine die-offs. I'm not sure yet, but we got a whole folder ready to go. Unbelievable. Good night, everybody. We'll talk to everybody tomorrow night. Have a great night, folks.